Well, the news finally came in this morning. Credit to Tom Pelissero breaking the news bright and early for everyone, because what would it be for Vikings in free agency to not have absolutely mammoth breaking news coming up at 7 o'clock in the morning? Tom Pelissero tweeting out this morning that the Vikings are not pursuing Aaron Rodgers anymore. They are moving forward with JJ McCarthy. We can get into some of the other insiders' reports later on in the discussion, but what does this mean? I mean, it clearly is going towards JJ McCarthy's way, but finally the Aaron Rodgers saga seems to be done, I would think, at this point, after what Pelissero said this morning.
Yeah, it really sounds like the Vikings are moving into the next phase of the offseason with JJ McCarthy as their QB1, which I think is important to give him that confidence and kind of put publicly back him in that role. And we'll see. I mean, the only way that the Rodgers thing could still be revisited at some point would be if he decides to just wait, which it seems like he might, because it seems like he doesn't have a whole lot of interest in playing for the Steelers or the Giants. And maybe now that the Vikings have said that they're pretty much out, maybe that'll change and maybe he'll decide to go play for one of those teams. But it also seems like Aaron Rodgers might just wait and keep the spotlight on him for as long as possible. And then if something comes up, theoretically, if it's a setback with JJ McCarthy or something and the Vikings revisit the idea, I think there's a very, very slim chance of that happening. I'd say it's over 99% that now that Aaron Rodgers is not going to be wearing a Vikings uniform at any point this year. But it could be any other team across the league where it's maybe a more desirable situation and they have something happen to their starter or whatnot. But yes, for now, the Vikings, they did consider it. I think that's worth saying. Like, all of the reporting is that the Vikings considered it. And I think that that's also common sense to some degree, because if they were never considering it, they could have hit up Tommy P at NFL Network and had him do the tweet he did this morning several weeks ago, or at least a week ago after Sam Darnold was out of the picture. So they discussed it, and I think Kevin O'Connell has a lot of respect for Aaron Rodgers, and they've known each other for a long time. And they ultimately reached a conclusion that I think we all thought that they would reach, which is that it's not worth doing at this point. You've got your franchise guy in the building. Let's move forward with JJ McCarthy. And so for now, that appears to be what is happening, which I think made a lot of Minnesotans happy to wake up and see.
Yeah, I think you hit on it, is that the nature of this reporting over the last week clearly showed that there was some thinking about it in the Vikings headquarters, which if you think about it, as much as it feels like it's completely out of the blue for the way this organization, this regime has acted over the past 3 or 4 years, it makes sense. You have a roster that's ready to compete now, and you're going to hand it over to a 22-year-old who's never taken a snap in the NFL. It would be right. You wouldn't be concerned that they are having some thoughts about, hey, there's a 41-year-old four-time Pro Bowler or whatever, four-time MVP.
Four-time MVP, yeah.
Four-time MVP. He's won a Super Bowl in the past. He's a free agent. You can have him. You don't have to give up too much. I mean, you have to give up a ton of money in your salary cap that you have a ton left over in, which we can get to later on. But it would be right for them to even consider that. So that doesn't really concern. I don't think it should concern many Vikings fans that they even considered it. Just how far this went and how long it kind of dragged on led many to get a little concerned that this was a serious possibility of ever happening. So what's next for the Vikings? I mean, I know you wrote about it over on Vikings on SI, the options for backup quarterbacks for the Vikings. Pelissero saying on the KFAN interview this morning that they're looking at the trade market for a backup quarterback more so than any of the free agents that are still available. So Joe Flacco, sorry, man, you're going to have to go to somewhere else probably, it seems like. So what are the options in that market for the Vikings?
Yeah, and I wouldn't totally rule out a free agent possibility, but the reporting from Pelissero is that outside of Sam Darnold, who they made a not overly competitive offer to, and it was an easy decision for Darnold to take the Seahawks offer and have the unquestioned starter role. And then Daniel Jones, they made a competitive offer to. He chose to go to Indianapolis. They even retracted that offer as soon as they thought he was leaning towards the Colts, because if he didn't clearly want to be here, this is a place where a lot of quarterbacks want to be. So they decided to move on there. There's been a lot of other quarterbacks who have signed, and I think that has led to some like questions from Vikings fans, like, oh, Marcus Mariota is gone, and Gardner Minshew, and Mac Jones, and all of these free agents are signing. Pelissero said, and who knows if this is 100% true or if this is the Vikings spin to some degree, but that none of those guys were really ever going to be Vikings targets. And it's unclear if any of the remaining free agents are going to be Vikings targets. I wouldn't write off the names out there, which include Joe Flacco, Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz, Drew Lock, guys like that. But you'd think if they were really in on one of those, given the desire that every quarterback has to come to Minnesota, that may have already happened, or it would happen soon. At least you'd think now that they're seemingly out of the Rodgers discussion. But I think there's other avenues. That's what Pelissero was saying, that the trade market could be a possibility. Who would that be? It's hard to say exactly. Alec Lewis at The Athletic mentioned Sam Howell of the Seahawks and Aiden O'Connell of the Raiders as a couple options. Those are both guys are sort of veterans, but they're on their rookie contracts. And the question there is, would that even be enough of an upgrade over Brett Rippon, who is the only other quarterback the Vikings have right now, to warrant even parting with a 2026 sixth or seventh round draft pick? Maybe, because those guys both have more starting experience than Rippon, but maybe not, given that Rippon's been in this offense for a while. If it's going to be a clear upgrade via trade, it's hard to know exactly what that might look like. I don't think we can completely write off the Kirk Cousins idea. I think it's very unlikely, given that he had that extra $10 million bonus trigger with the Falcons. The Falcons have said they want to keep him. Cousins has said that he wants to have a chance to start somewhere if he's going to be elsewhere. And I don't think he would have the opportunity to start in Minnesota. And I also don't know if the Vikings would have interest in eating a decent portion of his salary to facilitate a trade with the Falcons. It's not impossible, but that one seems really unlikely to me. So I frankly don't know where the Vikings go at backup quarterback if they're not interested in. To me, Joe Flacco and Carson Wentz seem like the most obvious options, but if they're not interested there, we're just going to have to kind of wait and see what Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolphus are cooking up at that position, knowing that JJ McCarthy is QB1.
You mentioned Sam Darnold there, and part of the reporting from Pelissero in the KFAN interview this morning was that they only ever offered him a 1-year deal. What do we make of that? That's surprising. There was reporting that there was a multi-year offer, I believe, on the table for Darnold, and that would be general consensus or thinking that there would be a multi-year deal available for him on the table after what he did last season. But Pelissero reporting only a 1-year deal was ever offered. What do we make of that and their commitment, I guess, that shows to JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been assuming all along, is that was, I think somebody else put it out there. I don't know if this was reporting or a rumor or whatnot, but that the Vikings offered 1 year, $25 million. That was kind of the maximum that they would go to. And that makes sense to some degree, in that just, they really liked what they got from Sam Darnold last year, but the last 2 games of the season mattered. They know what they have, or at least they are confident in the offseason sample last year of what they have in JJ McCarthy, and they're going to move forward with him. And if Darnold wanted to come back on a very team-friendly 1-year deal and compete for the job, then they would have gladly had him back. But obviously, I think they realized that was unlikely, given the interest that he was going to inevitably have, even if his market was surprisingly small for a quarterback who, coming off the kind of season that he had. He still got a decent contract from the Seahawks. He's at least guaranteed to be their starter for 2025. So yeah, I think the lack of interest in a multi-year offer for Darnold made it very clear that this is going to be JJ McCarthy's team.
So then what's next when we look at the timeline for JJ McCarthy? And the timeline's always been important to this regime. It's clear. What's next for the JJ McCarthy era that we should expect to see from this quarterback that they drafted with the 10th overall pick last season?
Yeah, the reports are that his knee is doing well. He's been working out at the facility. He has gained some of the weight back that he lost during the rehab process after the meniscus injury last year. The next thing will be just the start of the offseason program, and players will be back in the building in April, and then it'll be rookie mini camp after the draft, and then all the veterans will officially start to practice with OTAs and mini camp and things like that. And it's always a multi-phase process where you start out just kind of back in the building, meetings in the classroom, installs, things like that, and then you hit the field for OTAs, and there's going to be a lot of attention on JJ McCarthy throughout those spring practices, just like there was last year. But no Darnold this time around, and he's going to go into, well, they'll have that break in June and July for the summer, and then when training camp starts, he's going to be the undisputed guy, and barring something really unexpected. Like, I don't think there's going to be a quarterback competition. I want to also say that he's not going to be just handed the role, but I think functionally, with what they've already seen from him, he's not just going to be handed the role, because they already know what he did last offseason. They already know that, he's been in the building for a full year learning the system. So obviously, I mean, they'll want to see continued development coming off of the injury from the spring through training camp. But if he shows that in the same way that he did last year, now a year further in, I don't think there's going to be any question about who the week 1 starter is for the Vikings at quarterback.
So I guess in conclusion of this entire conversation, is it safe for Vikings fans to go and celebrate what has been a really outstanding offseason so far for Minnesota, and get it in filling a bunch of holes, splashing a bunch of cash, and still having a ton of cap space? Are we safe to now go celebrate, or do we still have to dread the possibility that Aaron Rodgers might show up in a purple jersey come September?
No, I think it's safe to celebrate. If you are the jaded or pessimistic or superstitious type, maybe you'll want to hold off just until the Vikings actually acquire a different quarterback. But I think it's pretty safe if you are firmly in the anti-Aaron Rodgers camp. I think you've gotten your wish, and he is not going to end up in Minnesota. I cannot say that anything really in the NFL is a 0% chance of happening, because it is a crazy league, and McCarthy is coming off of a notable knee injury that theoretically raises his re-injury risk beyond what a player not coming off of a torn meniscus has. But I think that's very marginal. I think with the medical technology that we have, I think he's going to be okay, and he's going to be fine. And Rodgers is going to have to figure something else out if he decides he wants to play in the NFL in 2025.
I know there's still some moves to be had. You still have to sign a draft class. There could be a potential. I mean, there will be at some point seemingly a quarterback move here, a backup quarterback move. But the Vikings, as we move on from the quarterback discussion, thankfully, after a week's time, the Vikings still do have around $32 million in cap space from over the cap, according to over the cap. So one bold prediction to end the show, what's that move coming to spend some of that money? I know they can roll over some of that next year and keep some of it, and I know they'll need to with how they structured some of these contracts this offseason, but clearly something might still be in the works with how much cap space they still have. So I want one bold prediction, just maybe off the wall, out of left field. What is it from you?
Yeah, it's fascinating that they still have as much cap space as they do. And I understand the speculation that leads to, that, there could be some big move coming, and I'm not willing to sit here and say that that's not the case. I mean, they've always kind of structured contracts so that the first year cap hit is pretty small, but the extent to which they've done that this year, and really, I mean, I think if you look at 2026 cap space on over the cap, they are dead last. They are in fact over the cap, as the website says. And so they still have the space this year. So yeah, I do wonder what they're doing. I will say my bold prediction, and I don't know if this is a bold prediction as much as this would be sick, is if they trade for Quentin Nelson, the Colts left guard, and they just go get the entire Colts interior offensive line. This is not an original idea from me. I saw somebody else talking about this, but how good would that be if you're just like, all right, our interior offensive line stinks. Let's just go get the entire interior offensive line that may be the best in the league over in Indianapolis and just bring it here. or one of the best in the league at least. That would be quite something. Nelson is absolutely a beast, a dominant player for a long time. And if they were to add some sort of stud left guards like that somehow, even if maybe it's if they draft one, like it just becomes really, really hard to see any weakness on this offense outside of, the quarterback uncertainty. Like the O line would be 5 out of 5 Pro Bowl type players. The receivers are obviously incredible. The tight ends we know about. They just traded for Jordan Mason to complement Aaron Jones in the backfield. Like that would be the one final move they could make on offense that would really kind of elevate things. I suppose the other one would be, adding another receiver to pair with Jefferson and Addison. But yeah, I'll say Quentin Nelson. If not necessarily a prediction, that would at least be a lot of fun.
I think I like that one for sure. Just adding one of the best interior offensive lines to already the one of, if not the best exterior of the offensive line in the tackle positions with Darrisaw and O'Neal. We know that how highly coveted and how highly respected those two are. Shoring up the interior was a big need. I tend to like the one that you ended off there, just going out and splashing a big trade for a big name wide receiver to add to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ
Tyreek Hill?
Hopkinson. I mean, he said he wanted out of Miami. What if you want a deep threat?
Imagine.
If you want a deep threat in a offense that values the long ball, go get the best deep threat in the league.
Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Addison would just be. I mean, that's like a fantasy draft team on Madden. Like that is unbelievable. I'd be really surprised, but
it's certainly fun to think about.
Yeah,
or
I think the
going
other
and trading
huge
for a big name cornerback.
Yeah, the other huge name is like Sauce Gardner. Are they going to? I just can't see why the Jets would
Right.
ever consider that, given that he's still on the rookie deal. And
yeah, unless they're doing a complete teardown and rebuild because they know their quarterback situation isn't great. How much do you trust Justin Fields to be the guy there for a long time? I know they gave him $30 million, but unless they're doing a complete teardown, I just do not see the New York Jets letting Sauce Gardner or even like shipping him out themselves. I just don't see that happening, but it's certainly fun to think about.
yeah, and look, there could be a big unexpected Vikings move that I will never rule that out. I just also think that is rather unlikely because I think they want to keep building this the right way.
Yeah.
And they've set it up so that they could go out and really splash some cash this offseason to build things around JJ McCarthy, and they've done that. But they're also not going to go full less need F them picks Rams with a quarterback that they've never seen play in an NFL regular season game yet. They want to hold on to their draft picks, which, by the way, they have 4 of them this year. And I'm almost positive they will trade down and find a way to get more. But I don't think they want to just suddenly be like, all right, our 2026 first rounder, you guys can have that. Let's go build this Madden super team. I don't think that's going to happen. But I am still kind of curious as to why they are maintaining some of this cap space. Maybe it's just for another minor move or two, and then you roll some of it over to help your 2026 situation. But yeah, we'll see. There's still, I think we're past the biggest week of the offseason, but there's still a lot to come, a lot of draft stuff to talk about, a few more free agent moves probably coming to kind of round out the depth. And yeah, the NFL news cycle, as we know, never really stops. So looking forward to see what happens next.
Absolutely. And go read all of Will's work over on Vikings on SI, covering it all over the next busy couple of weeks leading up to the draft. Also covering the Timberwolves at Timberwolves on SI, Twins on SI, and Gophers on SI. Go read all the work there. Hit subscribe to the YouTube channel. Lets you be notified every time we post a new video here, as well as helps us out greatly. We greatly appreciate that. And we'll talk to you tomorrow with another topic across Minnesota sports. Talk to you then, Minnesota sports fans.